The lake was glass, still moonlight, dancing on its surface like it didn't have a care in the world. I'd chosen this cabin for that exact reason. Silence, solitude, a clean break from 20 years in Washington's shadow war of digital espionage. My name's Caleb Mercer, and I wasn't looking for trouble. But trouble has a way of finding people like me. The cabin sat on the edge of Briar Ridge Lake, nestled between towering pines and a jagged cliff line no one sane would build near. I liked that. The less accessible, the better. The land came with a title, mineral rights, and, unfortunately, a little footnote I'd ignored during closing, subject to homeowners association governance. The first knock came 3 days after I moved in. A woman in an ironed polo shirt, sunglasses perched like armor, stood at my gate with a clipboard. Her smile was tight rehearsed. "Mr. Mercer, I'm Diana Trask. I'm president of the Briar Ridge HOA. Didn't vote for you," I muttered, scanning the perimeter through mirrored lenses. She chuckled like it was a joke, but her eyes never left mine. "We noticed you haven't submitted your renovation forms," she said, gesturing toward my new solar panels. "All exterior changes must be approved. They're portable and legal. They violate the neighborhood harmony clause." I leaned on the gatepost, the one that says you can tell me what color mailbox I'm allowed to have. "It's about protecting property values," she said, her tone sharpening, "and security. Some neighbors are concerned you haven't checked in." I raised an eyebrow. "Checked in?" She stepped closer. "Here we maintain a sense of order. Community. It works because we all follow the same rules. I've spent my life defending a system where people can choose not to follow arbitrary rules," I said evenly, "so long as they don't break the law." Her jaw tightened. "We'll be in touch." She turned and walked away, heels crunching on gravel, and I knew this wasn't over. That week I received 5 violation notices, one for unauthorized satellite equipment, another for non-standard roofing materials. My firewood, the stack, was unsightly, and my truck, which was military issue, was deemed commercial and banned from overnight parking. It was harassment, slow, methodical pressure. But I didn't fold. I documented everything. I installed discrete cameras. I even had an off-grid backup system routed through an old Satellink I'd repurposed. I wasn't just a retired tech spook, I was someone trained to think 3 steps ahead. What worried me wasn't the paper trail, it was the people watching me from across the lake, the same SUV driving past my cabin at odd hours, the sudden interference on my radio scanner. Then I noticed something strange twice. My cabin's door was unlocked in the morning, nothing missing, no signs of forced entry, but my desk had been subtly rearranged. My laptop was tilted just slightly, not enough for a civilian to notice, but enough for someone like me to know I was being hunted. I filed reports with the county sheriff. They shrugged. "That's just HOA drama. We don't get involved in private community enforcement." Private enforcement. I started digging. Turns out, Briar Ridge HOA contracted with a security company called Black Elm Operations. On paper, they were licensed for neighborhood patrol, but deeper inspection showed something else: false certifications, shell billing addresses, and one field supervisor who was dishonorably discharged for impersonating federal law enforcement. That was no longer an HOA nuisance. It was a felony operation. I contacted a former agency contact, now working with the Bureau's cyber task force. I sent him everything: contract scans, camera footage, timestamps, badge images. He didn't laugh. He asked me for coordinates. Something bigger was at play, and my quiet cabin had just become the fulcrum that night. I disabled the front-facing cameras and rerouted surveillance to interior sensors. Then I waited. No lights, no music, just me, the lake, and a loaded shotgun across my lap, because something told me they weren't finished sending warnings. They were going to send men, and I was going to be ready. It started with a sound of dry leaves cracking, barely audible, but unmistakable. I killed the lantern with a quick twist, letting the cabin fade into darkness. The only light came from the waxing moon painting the forest silver. My security. The system flickered silently on the laptop beside me, 3 heat signatures moving low, fanned out in a practiced formation. They weren't kids. They weren't hunters. They were professionals. I zoomed in. Night vision lit up their silhouettes: dark tactical gear, gloves, suppressed pistols, earpieces, no insignia, no visible ID, but they moved like they'd done this before. My gut clenched. This wasn't intimidation anymore. It was an op. I keyed the encrypted transmitter I'd hardwired into the comms drawer. Cipher 17 to Falcon Control. I whispered, "Midnight breach, 3 hostiles. Breach vector confirmed. Grid coordinates live. Requesting immediate deployment." Copy. Cipher 17 came the calm reply from my FBI contact. "Falcon team mobilized. ETA 20 minutes. Hold position. Do not engage unless forced." I set the mic down and reached for the 12-gauge propped by the window, then slid behind the inner wall, a blind corner I'd designed for situations just like this. My pulse was steady. I'd spent years neutralizing threats in foreign zones, but hearing those footsteps on my porch, that stirred something else. One of them spoke into his cum. His voice was hushed but picked up by the directional mic above. The door. Target is inside. Lights out. Execute quiet entry. We secure the drives and disappear. They thought they were stealing data. They didn't know the only thing waiting for them was a federal sting. The lock turned without a click. Smooth. Fast. My cabin door creaked open, and the lead intruder stepped inside, scanning the room with a low red beam. He moved toward the desk, right toward the decoy hard drive I'd planted. That's when I flicked the toe switch under the floorboard. Clack. The steel shutters dropped on the windows. Panic-proof magnetic locks slammed the front and rear doors. Gas vent fans kicked on with a low hum, sucking all ambient noise from the room. The lead man froze. His pistol came up, but not fast enough. A flashbang detonated just outside the front wall, rattling the timbers like a thunderclap. They hadn't breached me. They'd been baited in. FBI's on the ground. The voice roared from the tree line. Dozens of agents in full tactical gear burst from the shadows, flooding the porch, the yard, the forest edge. Red and blue strobes lit up the lake like a crime scene. I heard one of the intruders shout, "They set us up." He tried to bolt through the back, but the reinforced door held. Seconds later, they were tackled and cuffed. Their weapons kicked across the hardwood floor. I stepped out of my shadowed corner and met the lead agent at the door. "Three unauthorized armed individuals impersonating law enforcement," I said, quietly. "One tried accessing a government-encrypted decoy drive. You'll find tracking implants on their belts." Agent Ruiz nodded grimly. "We've been watching the HOA since your tip, but this is bigger than local fraud. They just crossed a federal line." He handed me a sealed folder. "We're executing a search warrant on their central office and private contractor database. Trask is going to be cornered before sunrise." I didn't smile. Not yet. Because, as the men were hauled into a waiting transport van, I noticed something. Chilling, each of their phones was set to live-stream.2. Who? I didn't have that answer yet, but someone higher up knew they were coming. The agents swept the area. I stood in the doorway of my lockdown cabin, watching them disappear into the night. I'd spent years protecting people from hidden threats behind keyboards and code. Now I was living one, and the woman behind it, or the one who called herself an HOA president, she'd just crossed into my world. She wouldn't like what came next. The sun rose over Briar Ridge with a strange stillness, as if even the birds sensed something was off. By dawn, word had spread. 3 men in tactical gear had been arrested at my cabin in the dead of night. Official reports were vague. Local authorities deferred to the FBI, who released a single sentence to the press greater than, "We are investigating a credible threat involving impersonation of federal officers within a private housing jurisdiction." It wasn't just vague, it was strategic. The real target hadn't been the 3 men. It was Diana Trask. By mid-morning, her perfectly manicured estate at the top of the ridge swarmed with unmarked SUVs. Agents in windbreakers hauled out hard drives, paper files, even burner phones. Neighbors peeked from behind blinds. Some gasped. Others oddly looked relieved inside my cabin. I monitored the scene through an encrypted feed the bureau granted me access to. Diana emerged in a tailored robe and oversized sunglasses, furious and cornered, but still posturing. "What is this nonsense?" she snapped at Agent Ruiz. "Do you people have any idea who I am?" Ruiz didn't flinch. "You're the president of an HOA that's been laundering resident data through illegal surveillance contracts. And as of this morning, you're also a person of interest in an organized fraud and impersonation case." She laughed, but it rang hollow. "You think this little cabin hacker set me up? He lives in the woods like a paranoid lunatic." Ruiz raised a brow. "The paranoid lunatic happens to be a former cyber operations officer for the Defense Intelligence Agency. And he just helped us catch your hand-picked enforcers impersonating federal agents." That shut her up. Hours later, I received a call. She lawyered up. Ruiz said, "Claims it's all a misunderstanding. But the tech we pulled from her servers, it's damning. Resident files, payment records, IP logs showing data routing through shell corporations overseas." "Who's bankrolling her?" I asked, still digging, but the scope's wider than we thought. "She's been running a data mining racket under the guise of HOA smart security systems. All those cameras she forced residents to install, they weren't just for safety. They were backdoored, feeding everything to a private server." I leaned back in my chair. "She built a digital panopticon in the woods," Ruiz exhaled, "and now it's crashing down." But Diana didn't go quietly. 2 days after the raid, she stood outside my cabin again, no sunglasses this time, just pure venom in her eyes. Her legal team hovered behind her like vultures. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "This community needed order, discipline. Without me, it falls apart." I stood calmly on my porch. "It didn't need your fake cops or your illegal surveillance. You turned a neighborhood into a fiefdom. You have no idea what you've done," she snapped. "There are investors, people who don't take kindly to." "I have recordings," I interrupted. "Every call, every threat, including the one you just made." A red light blinked on the cam mounted discreetly under the eave. Her eyes flicked to it. For the first time, she looked afraid. "You've made enemies, Mercer. I've made peace." That night, the community held an emergency vote. With Diana in custody and the board under federal investigation, residents dissolved the HOA by unanimous decision. The documents were filed by morning. Briar Ridge, once a place where people whispered behind doors, finally exhaled. Neighbors I'd never spoken to knocked on my cabin door offering coffee, firewood, even thanks. Some had been fined into bankruptcy over made-up violations. One elderly woman cried when she learned her personal medical files had been sold to insurance firms by Diana's data compliance team. I didn't need recognition. I needed closure. The real win came a week later when I opened an envelope, left in my mailbox, no return address, just a thumb drive inside and a note, greater than she had more secrets than even the FBI guessed. Thought you'd know what to do with these. A friend. I plugged it into an isolated terminal. Encrypted files. Dozens of them. One folder labeled Fallback Contracts Intimidation Squad. Another Bridges. Financial ties to private surveillance firms. The last one. Contingency targets. My name was at the top. I leaned back, eyes narrowing. This wasn't over. Not yet. I stared at my name bold, underlined at the top of the contingency targets list. It wasn't just a threat. It was a hit list. Diana Trask may have been behind bars, but her web was still spinning. The contracts on that drive included code names, payment trails, and cryptic notes about neutralizing threats and recovering compromised assets. One name showed up repeatedly alongside mine, Glass Viper, a call sign, likely a freelancer. The Bureau had underestimated the scale. This wasn't just a corrupt HOA president abusing her power. This was an embedded network using HOA infrastructure to hide a paramilitary-grade surveillance operation for profit. And maybe worst, I forwarded the drive to Agent Ruiz through an encrypted channel. Within the hour, he called me, his voice tight. This is bigger than we thought. Diana was just a public face. There's a firm in Eastern Europe laundering payments. They've used similar methods in tech parks and gated communities across 6 states. You kicked over a hornet's nest. Is the FBI moving? We're coordinating with Cyber Division, but it'll take time. You, however, you're in the crosshairs. I already knew. That night I heard it again, a sound too careful to be casual. Gravel shifting beneath boots, movement along the tree line, but this time I didn't wait for entry. I activated my perimeter deterrence, a sharp sonic pulse, and a pre-recorded message from Agent Ruiz. This property is under federal surveillance. You are being tracked. Silence. Then footsteps. Running. The cameras caught a man retreating into the wood stall, masked rifle slung low. I scanned the frame and matched him to a grainy image from the Glass Viper folder. He wasn't just casing the place. He was testing my response time. I reinforced the cabin's security and laid traps not lethal but persuasive. I didn't want blood. I wanted a name. 3 nights later I got it. Motion sensors triggered again this time. A tripwire led the intruder into a snare net, rigged between 2 pine trees. By the time I stepped out with my weapon leveled, he was writhing on the ground, arms bound, cursing in what sounded like Czech-accented English. Who sent you? I asked calmly. He spat on the ground. I crouched, held up a photo pulled from the drive. It showed Diana Trask in a private meeting with 2 men, one of them labeled GV. His eyes widened. You don't know what you've stumbled into, he hissed. I know enough, I said. But I want the rest. By sunrise, Ruiz and a federal transport had him en route to a blacksite interview room. I wasn't told what came of that conversation, but I didn't need details because by the end of the week, 3 more arrests were made in other states. A data center in Nevada was raided, and Diana, she cut a deal. Her sentence dropped from 30 years to 8 in exchange for everything: names, locations, and contracts going back 6 years. The prosecution called it the largest private domestic surveillance ring in U.S. history. Briar Ridge. It became a symbol, not of corruption, but of resistance. Without the HOA's iron grip, the community transformed. Residents pooled money to build a shared dock. The elderly woman whose identity had been sold. She now ran the local relief fund. People who once cowered behind blinds now waved from porches. But I didn't join the celebrations. I was rebuilding my cabin, not from damage, but from the need for clarity. I stripped away the outdated systems and rewired everything myself, not just for safety, for closure. On my last day of repairs, a courier arrived with a sealed envelope. Inside was a photo of Diana in her prison jumpsuit, head bowed, hands cuffed, taped. Beneath it was a note in clean block print: greater than some tyrants fall in the streets, some fall in silence. You made sure this one fell loud. No name, no signature, just validation. I burned the note in my fire pit, watching the ashes lift into the wind over the lake. Not all battles are loud. Some are quiet, methodical, fought through code, patience, and resolve. But justice, when it comes, echoes louder than any explosion, and somewhere, behind the still water and whispering trees, the lake knew. The tyrants were gone and I was still standing.